Morning! I want to have a look today at that age-old question of efficiency. What is the furthest I can go in my car with the least amount of input, whether that be cost or energy of whatever description that happens to be? Now, before we get too carried away, let's set ourselves some ground rules. This isn't about trying to get the most amount of mileage you can out of your car. Now, obviously we're talking about electric vehicles here, but as I said before, this is a question that's been around since, well, transport began. It doesn't matter if you've got a diesel car that can do 500 miles between fill-ups. It's about getting the most for your money, but without too many compromises. So, if you're thinking, right, I can drive at 40 mile an hour on a dual carriageway, hypermilling a lorry for 120 miles in my 24 kilowatt hour Leaf. Brilliant, well done. But you're not going to do it every day, are you? I want to look at everyday driving. I want to look at the type of driving that I want to do. Yes, of course, you know, I have a 24 kilowatt hour Leaf. I have had to make compromises at times, but day to day, in most of my driving, I do not want to make any compromise. I just want to get in the car and drive it like it's any other car. That's the point for me. It's a car. It's a tool that I use day in, day out. So for me to be able to just maybe tweak a few settings within the car to allow me to continue driving it, but maybe get a little bit more mileage because of the size of my battery, I see that as a good thing. But it's not going to hinder what I do all the time. It's not going to change anything I do. I want to drive on a dual carriageway at 70 miles an hour. I don't want to have to creep up to a gentle speed. I want to just pull out of a junction and get up to speed. I don't want to have to think about lots of things to make my car go further. So with that in mind, I've been trying out a few settings. And this has come about because when you buy an electric vehicle, it comes with a number of economy settings. Now, they could be perhaps an economy switch or the regenerative braking. There's a number of ways of adapting your car to make it the most economical it possibly can be. For me in the Nissan Leaf, I've got an eco button, which basically just dulls down the power, if you like. When I put my foot on the accelerator, all the power isn't there instantaneously. It's quite a slow lumbering power curve, if you like. Now, if I put my foot flat to the floor, of course, it's all going to kick in. But day-to-day driving, it effectively just makes that accelerator feel soft and unresponsive, if you like. Now, if you drive it day in, day out with it on, you kind of get used to it, and it just becomes the way you drive your car. So that's one of the features on the Nissan Leaf. The other is the regenerative braking. Now, of course, when you're slowing down, the car naturally uses some of that power to feed back into the battery. In my car, I've got the normal drive mode and I've got B mode, which gives you a little bit more power in the regenerative braking. So you can feel, as you lift off the accelerator, you almost feel the car start to brake. Now, in all the EVs, that's different. But with all these features and all this assistance trying to make it as economical as possible, do we actually see better range? Or are they a load of gimmicks that actually we as the driver can overcome and we can make the car work better for us? And so the test itself, what I wanted to do was try and get some data together from people who claim that actually the way that they set their cars up is the most efficient. So I came up with 3 modes or groups of settings that people seem to use a lot and people seem to have a lot of success with. And I took those 3 groups of settings and I trialed them. I trialed them over a 3-week period. So each group of settings, I drove my vehicle in that setup for 1 week. Now, of course, this isn't a scientific in the lab set of conditions. This is my real world driving, but week to week it's quite similar. So I do a lot of driving to and from school. That's a 12-mile round trip, country lanes, and you are generally anything between 20 mile an hour and 60 mile an hour. I also go backwards and forwards to work. That's an 80-mile round trip with charging, and involves me driving on dual carriageways, A roads at 60, 70 miles an hour. And in each week, I also made sure I incorporated a motorway drive of up to 100 miles, where I sat at 70 miles an hour. And I made sure I drove at 70 miles an hour. I didn't sit behind lorries. I drove as I would normally drive any other car on the motorway. So using those 3 sets of settings, doing my normal driving, I got some results and they were quite interesting. And I'm going to talk you through each one now and how the week went for each one. Week of my test, I began by driving how I've always driven this car, to be honest. I had Eco on, I had full regen on in B mode, and why wouldn't you? As far as I was concerned, and as far as Nissan have informed me, that is the most economical way to drive this car. That's what I should be doing. So that's what I did. And the results I got were exactly the same as what I've always had on this car. I've always had a result of 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour, driving with those eco features turned on. So that was the end of my first week. The second week, I wanted to drive with just the eco button on. And the reason I wanted to do that was because what people commented and what I felt was when you put the car into B mode, it almost feels as if the car is using its own power in order to generate some power to put back into itself. Got a pheasant running in front of me. It's lovely living around here. So what it feels like is you're always pushing and using more energy in order to regenerate that energy back into the battery, which I'm sure it doesn't, but that's what it feels like, and that's what people commented. And they said that if you don't have B on, then you get a better mileage return. So I tried that for a week, and it was quite interesting, the result at the end of that week. I was using 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So I had actually improved by 0.1, which isn't a great amount in the grand scheme of things, but it was an improvement. So that was interesting. Week 3, I turned off eco and I just engaged B, full regen mode. Now the reason for this is because people were commenting that actually eco doesn't do anything. You're constantly having to put your foot down a bit harder on the accelerator, and actually it doesn't make an awful lot of difference. If anything, you're less economic in your driving. So I tried that for a week, and again I was really surprised by the results, because after the last set where we talked about possibly being in full regen was using more power in order to generate some back into the battery, actually I got a better result again, and it settled at 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour. But that said, a lot of the time it was at 4.2, so I'm obviously at that upper end, and the only time it started to drop back down was when I was on motorways and dual carriageways a lot, and it just tailed off. And since I've been doing that test, they are the settings that I've stayed in this car. So I'm now 2 or 3 weeks down the line from that. I've stayed using those settings and I'm still getting a good 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour. So it goes to show that those settings work, and the people that suggested them to me clearly are getting the same results. They've done the same things. So that's all really interesting, and we've proved that we can get 0.2 of a mile per kilowatt hour better economy. Is it really worth it? Well, let's talk facts and figures, and let's talk money, and we'll see what difference it makes. Let me just find somewhere to pull in, and I've written it down. I'll be able to tell you. Okay, so facts and figures, here we go. So I've taken the lower end and the higher end. I've ignored the middle one. So my old driving style, when I was getting 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour, if I said I put 20 kilowatt hours of electricity into my car, that would propel me forward 78 miles. The other end, where I was getting 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour, if I put 20 kilowatt hours into the car, that would propel me 82 miles. So it's a difference of 4 miles per charge, which isn't a massive amount. Let's take it all the way up. Let's say we're really high mileage drivers every day, and we charge the car 5 times a week with 20 kilowatt hours of electricity. That over the course of 1 year would be 5,200 kilowatt hours of electricity. Now, at 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour, that would take me 20,280 miles. At 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour, that would take me 21,320 miles. So a difference of 1,040 miles. So then that starts sounding, well, if I did that in a year or even over 2 years, actually over 1,000 miles difference just by changing one setting, that sounds quite substantial to me, and I'd be really interested in making sure that that works. But don't get too excited. Remember, we're in an Eevee here. How much does it cost to charge your Eevee? Well, if I work it out that I charge that on my home electricity rates, which I can't remember, 12.5, 13p per kilowatt hour, something around there, approximately that is going to save me, by changing one setting, £35. Well, that sort of driving is just less than 2 years for me to save £35. So when you take all that into account and put everything together, is it worth changing your settings in order to save money and get better economy? My personal opinion, no. Find yourself a setting that works, that you enjoy driving with, because based on those prices, you're not going to save yourself all that much money. So just make the car work for you. Make sure you enjoy it, driving it. I now really enjoy driving with the eco button off, knowing that actually I'm getting a little bit better economy, but even if I wasn't, I wouldn't care now, because I've just shown that it doesn't make any difference. I just purely used it because I thought I was saving myself a whole load of mileage and a whole lot of money. I'm not. So hopefully that's helped you. But what are your experiences like? Do they kind of match with what I've found, or are they vastly different? I think it's one of those questions that people are really interested in, especially if well, it doesn't matter if they've got an Eevee or whether they're looking at it. People just want to know what those economies are like, and how easy is it to make this work and do the mileage that you want it to do. So please share your experiences, pop them in the comments section so that I can see how you're getting on. It might even show me a better way of driving it. But either way, hopefully you found the video enjoyable and of some use. If you have, remember to like and share, and if you're not doing so already, subscribe to the channel. And as I've said before, if you want to support the channel, pop on over to Patreon. You'll see the link somewhere on the screen here, and go and have a little look. That would be brilliant. But for now, thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.